All right, everybody has a calculator in this review in their reference sheet. Okay. So there are 6 sections on this quiz. Somehow it didn't enter my brain that that was a lot, so I get to record 6 grades for everybody. There are 2 trig equation solving, 2 sections on vectors, and 2 on probability and stats. Okay, so the first section on the review is review of trig equation solving. Does anybody remember what we want to do on 1A here? Yeah, we want to get all the sign, or the x's in this case, the sine of x, together. So if we add these to sine of x over here, we'll have 6 sine of x equals square root of 27. And then just divide by 6. Does that simplify maybe? Because it's definitely not looking like something that's on my unit circle right now. Square root of 27 would be 9 times 3, so that would become 3 square roots of 3, and it's over 6, so that would reduce to what? Square root of 3 over 2. Now it's looking like something that's on my unit circle. Remember, these are the ones where you have to decide, do I need to put plus or minus 2 pi n on the back? And if it says 0 to 2 pi, the answer is no. We just need the numbers from the unit circle. But there are likely to be 2 places, and these should be in radians. So can you look at your unit circle and see where the y value for sine had a square root of 3 over 2 that was positive? I am thinking pi over 3 is one of them, and 5 pi over 3, is that the other one? No, sine, yeah, 2 pi over 3, yep, I was thinking wrong quadrant. Anybody have a question about how we did that, or why there's no plus or minus 2 pi n, or where we got those answers? Okay, I'm going to go down to 2a. This time it does say all solutions from negative infinity to infinity, so that's telling us we will need some plus or minus either 2 pi n or pi n. And the idea for both of these is to do what? Anybody looking at those two, part A and part B, and remembering what we have to do? Yeah, we have to factor something out. So on the one I have circled here, 2a, we can take out a tangent of x. And what would be left in the parenthesis, guys? Yeah, don't forget the minus 1. Sine x minus 1 equals 0. All right, it did have to equal 0 before we could do that, just so we're clear. Then if we set each part equal to 0, we have the tangent is 0, oops, or the sine is 1. I wrote that wrong. I think the sine is only positive 1 one place, right? Is that at pi over 2? Pi over 2 plus or minus, and the sine has a period of 2 pi n. And then tangent is 0. Remember, that's not going to be on your reference sheet, but tangent is y over x. So if you had 0 over some number, like 1 or negative 1, you would get a tangent of 0. So the place that happens would be 0 and pi. You could call it 2 pi because it doesn't tell us what we can or can't call it here. So now, the shortest way to write that would be to say 0 and then tangent repeats every pi. So you'd put 0 plus or minus pi. But if you wrote 0 and pi and put plus or minus 2 pi n, I would not count that wrong. It's just kind of redundant because the period for tangent is actually pi. But that's probably what most of you would have done, and I'm okay with that. Yep, the shorter way to write it would have been 0 plus or minus pi n. Any questions? All right. Then C and D both have a squared in them, and they are all the same function. C has cosine squared and cosine, D has sine squared and sine. So both of those you need to first make equal to 0 and then factor, okay? I circled D. I just thought that was a little more factoring practice here. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the 4 over so that it equals 0, because you cannot factor until it says equals 0. All right, now you can pretend this just says 2 something squared minus 9 something plus 4, and think about how you would factor that. Remember, some of you still struggle with these. To get a 2m squared, I need a what? A 2m and an m. I just picked m randomly. To get a 4 at the back, I could have a 1 and a 2, a 1 and a 4, sorry, or a 2 and a 2. What do you think? If we need a 9 in the middle, yeah, I think we need a 4 back here so that 4 times 2 becomes 8 to get us close enough to 9. Does that work? And 1 would be 9. And to get a negative 9, these would both be negative, and would that give us a positive at the back then? Okay, so very, very carefully double check that you've made it work. Now, you can write it and solve it just like this. You could say now m equals 1/2, right? If you added the 1 and divided by 2, and m equals 4, and then you could go to sine. Or you could go over here and factor it 2 sine minus 1 and sine minus 4. If you set this one equal to 0, you'd end up with the sine is 1/2. Did I skip too many steps, guys? And the sine is 4. Anybody remember one of those is easy peasy because we get to do what? Yeah, the sign cannot be above 1 or below -1, so we can throw that one out. I don't have the directions. What were the directions? Was this all solutions? Okay, so the sine is 1/2, means we need a 1/2 back here, which I'm thinking is pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. And because it said all solutions, not just 2 pi, 0 to 2 pi, we need a plus or minus 2 pi n on the back. All right, how are you feeling about that section? Okay, there's some for you to go back and do tonight, or we can do them tomorrow if we need to. Does it show you that this is another section or not? I think this is another section of the quiz, like we've skipped from 5.3a now to 5.3b, okay? You told me these were easy, and I warned you that students struggle with these on the quiz every time because they don't practice them, but I tried to make the directions clear. It says solve by graphing in radians. Use a window for x of 0 to 2 pi, y of -2 to 2. Give solutions to the nearest 3 decimal places between 0 and 2 pi. Okay? So should we do A or B? Which one? B? Okay. So first of all, I'm going to go to mode and make sure I'm in radians. And then I'm going to go to window, and it said 0 and 2 pi and -2 to 2. Slide that on there. And then I'm going to go to y equals, was this one cosine? But it was like negative, oh, it was sine? Sine, I'm doing B, I guess. Sine, is it -4/11 or something? Okay, so I'm putting them in y1 and y2. And then I'm in a graph, and I want the intersection points. But what do I want at the intersection points? This is always a struggle. Students want to give me an ordered pair. I don't want an ordered pair because this was an equation. What was the letter in the equation? It's either theta or x, right? So I need only the x number as the solution. Does anybody know what this y number is? -0.363636? Yeah, that's -4/11. Okay, so I don't need to know that number. I just need to know the x value that made that happen. So 3.514, anybody get that? And then remember when you try to find the second solution, when it says guess, so enter, enter, but then when it says guess, I need to be closer to that second one so that it finds that one. Sorry, mine isn't scrolling very well. Anybody get 5.911? Let's see, I should put that on here so you have it for your notes, if I can get it. Yeah, you can put theta, oops, or x, or that's the two solutions to the equation. Okay, so we just graphed, and we got theta equals this, or and this, or comma this, or whatever. Whoops, was it 5.911? I just randomly put 0.911. Do I have them right now, guys, the decimals? Okay. Questions on how we did that? We could write a note here that said we put in y1 sine of x, and in y2 -4 divided by 11, and we want only the x value. Okay, does that help you? All right. Number 4 has practicing where you have to, the directions are very clear. It says use a trig identity trade to help find the exact solutions, okay? So these are probably the trickiest ones for, well, I don't know. Anyway, this is my hint, okay? There are 3 problems. We can do this one, is this number 4 or is it 4B or? I'm gonna do this one that says, I think, yeah, okay. Do the one that says 2 cosine squared equals 1 minus sine. This one's a little trickier than I think it was on the quiz, but we have to have everything in terms of sines and cosine, one or the other, okay? We don't have a trade for plain sine. We do have a trade for cosine squared that uses a Pythagorean identity because it said that, right? So what is the trade for cosine squared? Yes, do you see the ones up at the top that say cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1? These are under the Pythagorean identities. Is that what it's called on your sheet? Okay, so if we want to get rid of cosine, it would be cosine squared equals 1 minus sine squared. Now, why was that helpful at all? Now we have signs everywhere, okay? What do you think we need to do next? Yeah, we need to distribute, and eventually we're going to have to factor because it has a sine squared, so we got to move everything around. All right, let's distribute 2 minus 2 sine squared of theta. I'm going to move everything to the right side so that I get a positive 2 sine squared. Is that okay with everybody? So I'm going to leave a 0 over here, subtract a 2, and add a 2 sine squared. And then actually I'm going to write it 2 sine squared first. Then we had a negative sine theta. And this 1 minus 2 would be a negative 1 at the back. You might need more steps to show that, but see if you get that same equivalent 3 terms. Anybody lost? We good? So factor. You can again write 2m squared minus m minus 1 if you want. I'm going to go ahead and write signs this time. So to get a 2 sine squared, I need a 2 sine times a sine. To get a 1 at the back, I need a 1 and a 1. So then I just need to figure out my signs. So this is 2 sine and this is 1 sine. How do I get a negative 1 in the middle? Yep, the 2 sine needs to be negative and the 1 sine. So now I'd have a negative 2 sine theta and a 1 sine theta, which would add up to a negative 1 in the middle. We're good? All right. How about the equal to 0 thing here? So if I set this one equal to 0, I'd have 2 sine theta plus 1 equals 0, or the sine of theta equals negative 1/2. Did I do that right? And this would just be 1. Oh, thank goodness. There's something good about this question. What am I excited about? The answer says, or the directions say what? Just 0 to 2 pi. So at least we don't have to remember any plus or minus 2 pi n. So just on the unit circle, we need all the answers where there's a sine of negative 1/2 and a sine of 1. Anybody find those spots? 7 pi over 6? Is it 11 pi over 6? And positive 1 would be pi over 2? No? Yes? Did I get them right? Okay. We can do one more of these because there's a typo. Hofbauer messed up on this one. I think this is this the last one of that section? It says sine squared minus 4, and this should say cosine of theta, okay? So if it says cosine back here, what do we need to trade this sine squared for? Something with, yes. So this was supposed to say this, okay? And then when you saw that, you were supposed to say, well, if I have a plain cosine, I can't get rid of it, but a sine squared, I can trade out for a what? 1 minus cosine squared. Can you work on that one on your own for a second? Rearrange it, figure out how it factors. Did you get cosine is -1? Did anybody get that? Or 5, but cosine can't be 5. So the x is -1 would be at pi? Is that it? So the only answer for this one is pi. Questions? All right, then we do have one more kind, and we learned this, and you guys thought it was pretty easy at the time, but I feel like it's been a long time since we did these. You know what? Let me make up one that you don't have. You don't need to write anything down, okay? What if it said the sine of 3x equals negative square root of 2 over 2, okay? You would look at that and you would ignore the 3x for a minute and you would say this value has to be where the sine equals negative square root of 2 over 2. Can you find me those spots, guys? The sine is negative square root of 2 over 2, 5 pi over 4, plus or minus 2 pi n, and 7 pi over 4. Is that right? Okay, and that would be, like if we called this u, this would be what u equals, okay? But we have one more step. Does anybody remember what the last part of the step is here? Last part of this question? It didn't say u, it said what? 3x. So then we had to do what? To solve for x, we need to divide everything by 3 or take 1/3 of it. Does that sound familiar? So we said 1/3 of this, 1/3 of this, 1/3 of this. You don't need to write this one down. We're going to do a couple examples, or one example at least in a second. But this would be 5 pi over 12 plus or minus 1/3 of 2 pi n would be 2 pi over 3. And this one down here would have been 1/3 of this, would have been 7 pi over 12 plus or minus 2 pi over 3n. Okay, so that was an example. Now let's go back and do, anybody care which one of these we do? Let's do the first one. Cosine of 2x is negative square root of 3 over 2. So originally we could say it just said find where the cosine is negative square root of 3 over 2. And we need all solutions. So I am thinking that is 5 pi over 6 and 7 pi over 6. Somebody double checking me. Okay, but it wasn't really a u in there, it was a what? 2x. So to get the x by itself, what are we going to have to do? Take half of or divide everything by 2. I'm going to write it as take half of everything. Okay. Can I move this at all? Oh dear. Oh, what a mess. All right, so when I took half of this, it became x. Half of this would have been 5 pi over 12. Plus or minus half of 2 pi n would just be pi n. And half of 7/6 would have been 7/12 plus or minus pi n. Now, does anybody remember how I explained how that made sense? Probably not. But when we were graphing back in the day, the cosine of 2x, 2 was the b value, so the period became 2 pi over 2 or pi. Is that what we wound up with? A period of repeating every plus or minus pi n at the back here, yes? Okay, so this was the period. All right. Do you need to see another one of those or not today? I'm going to let it be, and then you can ask again tomorrow if you need more. All right, that brings us to the third section of the quiz. The third section of the quiz is bearings, or vectors and bearings. This one says, sketch and find the horizontal and vertical components. Remember, those are like r cosine of theta and r sine of theta. That's how you find components. If it is 90 miles an hour and a bearing of south 40 degrees west. So this means starting off of south, we're going 40 degrees to the west. Okay, so I'm going to draw a little dotted north, south, east, west. And off of south, 40 towards the west. So the 40 degrees would be in here. And we're supposed to draw it and label it 90 miles an hour. All right. I don't care as long as you draw something there going in the right direction. I'm not going to be picky, okay? About how you labeled everything, whether you put north, south, east, west, it doesn't matter. I do need to see work for you to tell me the angle you're going to use. Can we use 40 degrees? Does anybody remember where it has to be? It has to be the angle off what? Positive x-axis. So you could go this way and call it a negative 90 plus 40, negative 130. Or you could go this way and figure out how many degrees that is. I was even thinking you could do 270. We backed up 40. Do you remember that this is 270? Backed up 40 would be 230. Okay. You could have called it negative 130 or positive 230. It'll give you the same numbers. So we're going to type 90 cosine 230 and 90 sine of 230. Or you could do negative 130 and it'll give you the same numbers. What mode do I need to be in? It is very clear on the quiz for each section what mode you should be in, or if it doesn't matter, but. So I need to change my calculator to degrees for this one. And then it was 90 times the cosine of, was it 230, guys? Thank you. Enter, and 90 sine of 230. And just to clarify, does a negative make sense? From where we sketched it, should the x and y coordinates be negative and negative because it's in quadrant 3, okay? If you did the same thing and you'd used as your angle negative 130 degrees, same numbers, okay? I promise. Negative 57.9 and negative 68.9. How we feeling on that one? All right, I'm gonna skip down to number 7. And really important part, does anybody remember how we come up with the components from the ordered pairs? It says we went from, and maybe it would help if we did a tiny little sketch here. We were at 511, so somewhere up here, and we went to negative 416. Okay? You subtract. Do you remember what order you have to subtract in, though? Yes, it's x2 minus x1, and then y2 minus y1. So negative 4 minus 5 is negative 9, and then 16 minus 11 is 5. So when you did this in delta math, you actually had to start at 511 and drag your cursor over to negative 416. And then remember, it made you move it to the origin. If you did your delta math, it made you drag this down to the origin so that it was here, because what it's really doing is going left 9 and up 5. Does it make sense for my little sketch? Left 9 and up 5. Okay. How do we find the magnitude and the angle? Ooh, does anybody remember anything about vectors? We wound up saying it was going left 9 and up 5. Magnitude is really the length here. Does that give you any ideas? How do you find that length? Magnitude always, always, always means Pythagorean theorem. Or they may have used a squared plus b squared in here. I can't remember. I think we did use a's and b's. But we're going to use 5 squared plus 9 squared. You can use negative 9, but then you need parentheses and all kinds of extra junk. Doesn't specify, so I would take an exact answer or a decimal. Let's see. Square root of 5. Was it 5 and 9, guys? I already forgot. Okay. 10.3, anybody? Good enough? And we weren't given any labels, so that's just the length. And then it says now find the direction angle off the positive x-axis. Okay. So vectors, we had Pythagorean theorem, and how did we find angles? Anybody remember? Okay. Inverse tangent y over x, does that sound familiar at all? So for this question, it's inverse tangent of 5 over negative 9. Now, does anybody remember the horror of this being in the wrong quadrant all the time? Yeah, if it's going to think we're over here, I think. So we're going to add 180 to our answer because we are in quadrant 2. Because it went left and up. All right, so inverse tangent, was it 5/9? Oops. Doesn't matter which, yeah, it doesn't matter which one gets the negative. It won't, the calculator will give you the same answer. So negative 29 or negative 29.1, but the calculator thinks we're down here. And we're not, we're over in this quadrant. So we're gonna add 180 to that to put down our answer. If you have not done your homework on vectors, I highly suggest you do. Okay. That's it, I think, for that section. Yeah, I'm not going to be picky. Yep, 151, I'm fine. Adding vectors is the next section of the quiz. Okay. And when we add vectors, does this look like this on yours? The angle is supposed to be in here and in here. I don't know, it looks like it slid on my... I gave you an easy one. These are two quadrant 1 angles, so there's no trickiness. But this is where you write the components: 9 cosine of 80, 9 sine of 80, and the components of the other one, somebody? Okay. The issue is nothing we have done yet is going to give us the resultant or the angle. We have a lot of steps to do. Anybody remember what we do next step? We just add those and come up with some kind of component answer. Okay, add them straight down, and you're going to need to close your parentheses here. So 9 cosine, I already forgot. Somebody? 80, close parenthesis, plus, was it 3 cosine something, or 3 cosine 17? Okay. And then we have to do the same thing for the y values, which are sine. So 9 sine 80. So I have 4.43 and 9.74. Okay, great. We did a lot of work and we don't have an answer yet. What are the two things we have to do to find the length and the angle? What did we do up above to find the length? Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to do 4.43 squared plus 9.74 squared. And that will be the resultant magnitude. Anybody else get 10.7? Okay, I'm going to round now to one place, but I carried extra places until now, but I won't be super picky on rounding. All right, and the angle, how do we do that? Inverse tangent. And where was 4.43, 9.74? What quadrant was this in? Right and up is quadrant 1, right? So do we need any craziness? 9.74. $65.5 roughly. Is it coming back to you now? Okay. Let's do this number 9. It says a constant force of 12 newtons is being applied at an angle of 68 degrees. Okay. So off of the horizontal, 68 degrees, 12 newtons. So how could I write those components, guys? Is it 68 cosine 12, 68 sine 12? Somebody's going to write that down. The angle goes with the cosine and sine, right? So it's 12 cosine 68, 12 sine 68. Then we are supposed to be adding a vector that is 70 newtons at 125. Okay, so if we wanted to put it on the same picture, it would be pulling over this way and a lot harder, right? 70 newtons. And it's at 125, but the good news is we just use that angle. So it's 70 cosine 125, 70 sine 125. Do you want to finish that one tomorrow? Want to get to some prob and stats or not? I'm worried we're running out of time here. You guys try that one and we can go over the answer tomorrow, okay? Number 10, do you remember these are real easy? We can do this one tomorrow, but you just like literally take the numbers from G and subtract after you distribute a 7 through the numbers from F, or you could distribute it as a -7 and then you combine them. We can finish that tomorrow. But let's talk about a few of these problem stats one. Okay, so it says we have 11 red, 4 green, 9 yellow. Wow, there's a lot of marbles here. Somebody add these up for me. 6 blue. How many marbles do we have? 30? Okay. So what is the probability of drawing a red or yellow? What does that mean? All of the winners are all the red and yellow. Okay, makes sense? So red and yellow would be 20. 20 out of 30, or it would reduce to 2/3. All right, I'm skipping down to C. What is the probability that 2 blue marbles are chosen on 2 draws without replacement? Do you remember how that goes? So first time we go to get a blue is what? 6 out of 30. And then you assume you won. So when you go back, now what? There's 5 blue left out of 29 marbles because we kept one out. It said not replacing it. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys reduce that, all right? What are the odds? Okay, anybody remember how odds goes? Odds was winners to losers, and I usually write it with a colon. So green marble. So there's 4 winners to how many losers, guys? 26, which you can reduce. All right. Is that enough review of that for today? And which one of these do you want to do? I don't want to do both today. Let's do B. Oregon ice cream sundae with 2 different toppings. You can choose from 6 flavors of ice cream and 4 different toppings. Oh, it says 6 flavors of ice cream, 4 toppings, but when he goes back, it says he has to pick 2 different toppings. So the second topping would be out of 3 choices. Okay. Then, oh, we got these to do tomorrow. Make sure we get to these chart ones tomorrow. And then make sure you know how to put this in the calculator. If you were gone yesterday, you need to watch the video so that this is not tricky stuff, but you need to make sure you know how to put those in the calculator and find mean, median, mode, etc. Okay? So we can go back over whatever you want tomorrow. I would like you to attempt to finish it tonight. There is also, guys, in Delta Math, there is an optional review, okay?